Hi, we are back. This is our second session, and it's on and how it affects your parenting. This is going to be an exciting session. We have Mr. Innocent Usar coming to speak to us. Mr. Innocent Usar is a man of depth. I don't know if you don't know him, you need to go and search him out. Mr. Innocent Usar is like Africa's. He's an NLP guru, and he's our coach. He's the one that teaches epic outcome matrix. So anything that has to do with trauma, mindset, consciousness, just call Mr. Innocent Usa. If you're listening to me and you want to do better in your life, you want to understand your mind training is what you need. I'm glad that I was able to get him to, have this conversation with us today. And I just want you to get your notepads and your pen and pay attention. This particular 1 hour, because a lot of things that we do unconsciously are stemming from our childhood experiences, and our make better decisions and heal, then we are in a better position to raise wholesome children. That's the particular reason why we are having this conversation. I'm sure you've read all about him and you're looking forward to hear from him. So you have the opportunity to learn from the best of the best when it comes to trauma, mindset, therapy, anything in that line. So I'm welcoming him. He's my teacher, and his teaching style is so interesting. It's going to keep you engaged, and as I welcome Mr. Innocent Usa to teach us on how to understand our childhood trauma and how it affects our parenting. Mr. Usa, welcome. So I'm leaving the stage for you right now, and you have the floor.
Thanks for having me, Vivian. And hello, everybody. Good evening. I hope you are having fun wherever you are joining us from the north, the south, the east, and the west. I'm so thrilled to be here today. I'm so excited. Uh, I am having introduced. I just love to help people move from where they are to where they want to be. And today, I'm hoping that as I share with you about understanding your childhood trauma and how it affects your parenting as a person, as an individual, as a dad, as a mom, or even aspiring parents, connecting the dots between where you're coming from in terms of your experience with trauma, headed the direction that you are headed as a parent or an aspiring parent, or somebody who has been parenting already but in a very dysfunctional way. Uh, Largely, trauma basically is the impact any impact that an event, some circumstance, or anything has upon us in our upbringing, in our environment, and with any significant emotional experience that we have had that alters our persona, that alters who we are, that alters and creates a new part of us that was not existing before the traumatic events. Traumatic events are not always negative events. Sometimes even positive events can have traumatic events on people. People have different way that we all have different ways of responding to things that happen with us or around us. Many people are not even aware that sometimes a traumatic event is even a birth when you observe another person going through trauma. Just observing another person going through trauma, dealing with trauma in a healthy or an unhealthy way can have a traumatic impact on you. And this traumatic impact is basically you handling an event a happenstance, an occurrence, something that someone else is going through or you are going through in your life in a way that creates another you, births someone else other than you. And I'm going to be using these layman terms so I can break it down and so you can understand exactly what I am talking about. So in my journey as a coach, as a therapist, as a trainer of trainers, trainer of coaches and therapists, and I have trained psychologists, I have trained psychiatrists and many people in the change work industry around Nigeria, around Africa, and in different parts of the world, literally. What I have seen happen is I have seen people go through trauma, especially in Africa, who are not even aware that they have been through trauma. People who have been traumatized, people who have been affected by their past, people who have been affected by their upbringing, but are not aware. They're not aware that they have been affected by their upbringing. And so what happens is you see someone in dysfunction carrying this dysfunction and imbuing on other people, on other relationships, on in other situations and circumstances without their conscious awareness. Okay? And so if you take Nigeria, for example, many people around us here and in Africa have been traumatized, have been through trauma, and are not even aware that they have been through that we have been through trauma. We are not even aware. And so what we need to do is to begin to understand first what trauma is, what impact it has had in our lives, okay, from the past, what impact it is currently having, and what impact it will have if we do not engage ourselves either in interventions that would heal, interventions that will help us become better, interventions that will help us deal with stuff sufficiently so that we can heal and go into the future that we really desire and create the outcomes that we want to create in our careers, in our work, in our relationships, in every place that we find ourselves. So quickly, what impact does trauma have on your parenting? And I'll start with a quick story. Let me share this story quickly with you. When I was growing up and going to school, my parents didn't always, provide for me everything that I needed while I was in school. My dad particularly would not pay school fees on time. Many times I found myself chased out of school. And so what would happen would be that I would find myself returning to school only after many of my other students and colleagues and friends had covered a lot of grounds in academics, and I would be home, and then my mom would go struggle to be able to raise money so I could go back to school. And that made me feel bad. That made me feel terrible. But I didn't know that that was creating another me, a me that was different from the me that was born. And I didn't know this until years later when I got married. Something interesting happened that I began to pay attention to. Now, this had happened consistently, but I began to pay attention to this. Now, listen to this story carefully. When I got married and I had children, I noticed that in raising my kids, I wanted the best for them, but I didn't know that my past and my upbringing and my lack and the abuse I had been what I had experienced with neglect. There are 5 types of abuses. Neglect is one of them. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, um, um, uh, physical, emotional, sexual, um, verbal abuse, and I think physical, emotional, verbal, sexual, and neglect. So 5 types of abuse. But I am particularly mentioning the impact that neglect had on me. Neglect is when the parent does not have time for the child, or the parent does not provide time to spend with the child and parent the child, time to spend with the child and love the child, time, not sufficient time or no time at all to be with the child and be who a parent is supposed to be with the child. That's a type of neglect. Another type would be not being able to provide for the needs of the child, whether it's with clothing, other life necessities, food, clothing, shelter, care, love, presence, protection, and all of that, absence. So for me, that type of neglect in terms of not being catered and provided for when it came to school fees and provision for my well-being as a child affected me. When I began to have children and it was time to pay school fees, my father, my wife rather, I married a beautiful, amazing woman. Talatu would say to me, that's her name, Talatu, Talatu. Talatu would say to me, we need to pay school fees. And listen to this. I would say to her, well, this term is just closing, so we'll pay next term, right? She says, no, the school has given the details of the school fees, so we can pay next term. And I would say, oh, no, who are we trying to impress? And she would insist, and I would say, no, I would back out. I would get upset, and I would say, we don't need to do that. We're not trying to impress anyone. What I didn't know was that I was projecting. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, but I thought she was, because the past I had come from had affected me so much that I didn't know that it would be just perfect and good enough to pay the fees immediately the fees statement is handed over to you. So I would say till next time, and when the new term would resume, she would remind me, and I would say, see, there are people from last term owing school fees. There are people owing school fees from 3 terms, from 3 years. So hey, calm down. We'll pay the fees when it's necessary. And I'll wait till the last minute. What had happened? The experiences that I had had as a child had so much impact on me that I began to leave it as a parent. I wanted my children to go through the same thing, but I wasn't aware that I was doing that. I wasn't doing that consciously. I wasn't doing that intentionally. So you may hear me talk about a bit of my experience here and there. And this caused a lot of tension in my relationship with my wife because she was coming from a different background. From her experience, fees were paid on time. They were paid ahead of time. Fees were paid and it was complete and there was never an issue and that kind of sort. That sort of a thing. And so what people don't know they do, what we don't know we do constantly is we take the way we are raised and we begin to raise other people. I'm sure you have heard this. People in pain spread pain. People who have been healed spread healing until there is, let me say that one more time. People in pain spread pain, and people who have been healed spread healing. People in pain spread pain, and people who have been healed spread healing as parents. So imagine the people who came from a background where there was a lot of pain and where there was no healing and where they went through a lot of torture with physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, or all sorts, sometimes a combination of all of these in different proportions. What happens is they pass it on, except there is an intervention. And now I like to stress that. Except there is an intervention, people pass on the abuse that they inherited. This intervention could range from maybe a religious or a spiritually enlightening experience. This intervention can come from getting education that is soul moving and soul searching. This intervention can come in the form of going through a healing process with trauma counselors, or going through an experience, or just realizing at some point, coming to a place of awareness of the pain that you are causing other people around you, causing your children, and so realizing that, oh goodness me, I need to change, or I'll keep on heaving on others the same pain and the same trauma that I have been through. Now, everyone is usually doing the best they can with the resources that are at their disposal. Let me say that one more time. Everyone is doing the best they can with what they know and with the resources that are at their disposal. And so what that basically means many times is people are in a place where it is what they know that they are giving unto others. Remember, you cannot give what you don't have. And when I say what you know, I don't mean what you know here, head knowledge or intellectually. I'm referring to what you know in terms of experience, experientially, what you know, what you have been in, what has affected you, who you have become is who you allow other people to experience. And so until there is an intervention, most people, most of us are sentenced to a lifetime of passing on to others whatever we have experienced. So I am not here pretending that everyone who is watching this video, who is listening to this, has been through some really terrible traumatic experiences. But you know, people who have been through experiences that are traumatic are not necessarily the people in the IDP camps. They're not necessarily the people in war-torn areas. They're not necessarily the people who are in Lagos traffic, even though all of these can and are often very traumatic. Sometimes they're just people who work in very chaotic situations at work, who grow up in neighborhoods in cities where there's a lot of dysfunction, who are in places where maybe their parents were okay, but the parents of their friends handed down all kinds of dysfunctional behavior and parenting, that what they saw with their other friends or with the bully who was not parented properly affected them. But since I'm narrowing this conversation around your experience as a parent, what I want to say to you is you want to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what kind of a parent am I? If you have never come to the consciousness of the kind of parent you are become, it is very likely that you are not aware that you have never sat down to ponder on the parenting style you experienced as a child. Who were your parents? Do you love the way you were parented? If you didn't love the way you were parented, many times you are abusing the people who are around you verbally without being aware. You're abusing the people who are around you emotionally without your awareness and without you intending to do so. You may be abusing the people who are around you um, in the five different ways I have talked about without your intending to do so. And so the things that we have encountered unconsciously in our growing up years begin to form the basis of our values and our beliefs and our attitudes and our language and our meta program and our memories. All of these things that we have experienced from where we're coming from begin to form a core of our beliefs, and our beliefs define the boundaries of what is real, what is our reality. Our beliefs are not things that we consciously are aware of every moment by moment experience of our lives, but they are the things that are the driving forces behind what we allow to come into our experience, or what we say makes that other experience outside of our reality possible or impossible. Beliefs define the boundary conditions of our thinking. And many times, our experiences from our parents, who were essentially our caregivers, who were essentially the people who tended us, raised us up, our experiences with them begin to form, they begin to form an idea of what is possible or what is not possible. Okay? So you want to pause and ask yourself, how was I raised? If you didn't like the way you were parented, if you didn't like the way you were raised, it's very likely that your children are not enjoying your parenting. And there's a caveat here. Remember, I said, except if you have experienced some level of intervention. And many times, the intervention that many people have experienced is only affecting, has only affected them and healed their a different their trauma in a certain area and may not have healed them in another area. And so many times our life's journey is about dealing with the different parts of our experiences where trauma has negatively impacted upon us. And so the impact of trauma creates this bubble around us that is like the layers of the onion. And so the healing journey is peeling off ourselves and experiencing healing layer after layer after layer after layer. Okay, and this would not happen necessarily in a week or in a month or in a year or in a decade. Sometimes it takes years, but it is somebody deciding intentionally that I want to be a better parent. And so I want to be able to get ahead with my life, consciously looking at how I was raised, consciously looking at the things I didn't like, consciously looking at the things I experienced that I didn't particularly, and paying attention and asking my children for feedback to ask, do you like, and sometimes that's the first place to begin. Have you ever had a feedback day where you encourage your children and your spouse to give you feedback about your parenting style? So ask them. So in a way where you promise yourself and you promise them, I will not be defensive, and ask them, what am I like as a mom? Who am I like as a mom? Who am I like as a father? Who am I like as a dad? And taking that feedback and soak it in without any kind of defense, and then write down everything that you get as feedback, and then begin to set yourself on a course of changing that consciously. The things that have become a part of who you are without your knowing unconsciously can only, the journey towards their change can only begin consciously. When you begin that change consciously, and then you schedule, you say, oh, this feedback I have gotten about this part of my parenting, I'll change that, I'll work on that, let's say every Wednesday, and I'll work on this one every weekend, and I'll work on these ones when I'm doing my homework review with my kids. When you begin to schedule, when you begin to plan, when you begin to be deliberate and scheduling in your day-to-day activity, how you will deal with aspects of the feedback that have been given to you by your children and by your spouse, it is very possible that you are on course towards dealing with the dysfunction that has affected you. But many people, what happens to us is we get into parenting by accident. We're parents by accident. We were not parented ourselves. We do not know what parenting is, and so we are very unlikely to parent other kids in a very functional way. Okay, without all of the 5 forms of abuse that I mentioned earlier. And so, what you and I need to do is we need to be deliberate, we need to be intentional to say, okay, how can I begin to parent properly? How can I begin to correct dysfunction? What can I begin to do? The first place to do that is to go back to your childhood, get help in getting back to your childhood and dealing with the stuff that you didn't deal with. Okay, go, because there is a child in you that is not healed, and that child in you is yearning for attention, is yearning for acceptance, is yearning for a sense of belonging. There's a child in you that's yearning for attention as an adult, as a parent, aspiring parent, that's yearning for attention, yearning for healing, yearning for acceptance. And until that inner child is healed, many times the wounded child in you that is not healed will continue to impact negatively on any child that comes around you. The wounded child is in you that is not attended to, that is not healed, that is not experiencing acceptance, that has not experienced acceptance. That wounded child will continue to impact on other people negatively. And when people try to talk to you or confront you about it, what you would do is you would recoil and get back into self defense. And most of this behavior is unconscious. So we need to begin to be deliberate. Deliberate and say, oh, okay, I do not have to realize that I'm demon possessed, I am evil, or I am bad. I mean, imagine the level of beating you see these days captured on social media, that, oh, this parent beat this child, or, this mom, this father beat this child. It was somebody actually took the camera and stood and was watching this child being beaten, and you're wondering, there was no intervention by this person who was holding the camera. They were capturing it for whatever purpose you would, literally not understand. And hey, it's just a bunch of dysfunction that is being created upon another level of dysfunction, upon more dysfunction, upon more dysfunction, and upon more dysfunction. So my challenge for you today is, You want to look at your life in perspective and ask yourself the important questions that you need to ask yourself so that you will know what you need to do to begin your journey of healing. But if you are living in denial, then there is going to be a problem. So let me give you an example of my life. Let me be very practical with you. When I first had my first child, I have three children. My wife and I are blessed with three kids: Jesse, Joni, and Justin. Now, many parents do not know that there are many ways to correct a child without having to beat them. What is the purpose of beating the child? The intention many times is good, but it is because most people are doing the best they can with what they know and with the resources at their disposal. If the only experience you had while growing up to be corrected was to be beating and be beating and be beating, you find many of these people today as adults helpless. You ask them, is there any way? They say, no, no, no. See, they tell you I turned out well because they beat me, not knowing that the truth here is you turned out well in spite of the beating, because many people didn't turn out well. Okay, so as adults, they are experiencing a lot of dysfunction in terms of they are not healed, they are in pain, very terrible self-esteem, low self-worth, and all kinds of dysfunctionality showing up in their workplaces, showing up in their communication, showing up in their experience in their careers, showing up in just different works of life, and they are not aware where that all that came from. It came from a past, a childhood where some scar was imputed on the child, not necessarily physical scars, but emotional scars, which were never healed, which, when healed, the adult would stand up to be counted. The adult would stand up to be the adult. And so I began to notice that whenever I got angry at my first son, I would yell at him and I would beat him. And then it's sometimes when there was a day, for example, that he took my phone and I just came back home and I saw my phone was broken. It was a new phone somebody had given me. The screen had shattered, and I asked who did this, and my son showed up from nowhere and proudly announced that he was the one who had done it. I was in shock. Why would you do this? I asked him. And his response was, I wanted to know what was inside. Now, this level of anger gripped me. I didn't beat him, but the way I was gripped with anger and I wanted to lash at him and beat him. And then I realized, oh my goodness, this is exactly what my father would have done. And I thought to myself, how can I respond differently? So I calmed down. And I'll tell you, from my standard today and how much I have grown, that was bad, even though I didn't beat him, because he literally could see that I was angry. So what I'm saying is, it is often healthier to be upset and express your displeasure to the child in a more pleasant manner. For example, the child has done wrong, you want to correct it, but you beat, you inflict physical, sometimes physical injury to the child. You put in fear in the child. You did not teach the child what they ought to have done. You do not instruct and correct properly. In the end, what do? What do you achieve? So the behavior is repeated. It's repeated because the child ought to have been instructed. But at that time, many of us are overwhelmed by the anger, by the fear, by the passion that we feel on the inside, that is burning on the inside, and then we unleash that on the child. Now, when you do that, nothing happens that helps the child to correct. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. But the excuse most parents give is, well, that is how I was raised. Can't you see how I turned out? The Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. No, this rod is for correction. The rod is not necessarily a physical rod. It's any attempt that the parent has at correcting the child, any attempt that the adult has at instructing the child. So if the child has done something intentionally, deliberately, and you want to use the cane, there is a proper, healthy way to do it. I don't do it anymore with my children. So I stopped with my first child. My daughter never got beating. My last child is 6 now. He's never got beating. But they know what is expected of them. in terms of behavior, what is allowed, what is not allowed. We engage in conversations. My children challenge me. They ask me questions. My daughter asks me sometimes, Daddy, why are you always watching CNN when mommy is cooking? They ask me questions, and they have the right to do that. We have had an engagement. We have had a relationship that encourages them to question, encourages them to engage, not in a disrespectful manner, but in a confident and yet respectful manner. Okay? So, beating of children, yelling at children, smally, your head, your whatever. So, my wife and I soon learned that if you will have to say something about our child's head, what we did was say, look at your head like my own, look at your eyes like my own. Look at, so you see that that was clearly what we began to do, chose to do. And you know, when you have other parents come to your home and see how confident your kids are, and see how they ask you, uncle, what's your name, and stuff like that, my kids know that they don't have to say sir 100 times to somebody as a sign of respect. One sir is enough. The respect is not in the number of sirs. Respect is in how they conduct themselves, how they see the adult, how they perceive the adult, how the adult is also respectful of themselves and carry themselves. Okay. So, how much trauma has affected you? Do you even know? Are you even aware? Okay, so I just shared with you how uh my parenting style. So what else do we do as parenting apart from correcting children? Okay, we do a lot of things that are in parenting our children, but what happens oftentimes is we are projecting on our kids who we have become and what we experience. We are unconsciously projecting onto our children who we have become and what we experience. If you grew up in a home where you were not trusted, your opinions didn't hold water, you have a high tendency, except there's an intervention, to suspect your kids, to not believe them, and to believe that they are exactly like who you were told you were. Okay. um Same thing with uh, your view of the world, your view of other people. If you're always nagging and complaining and murmuring and grumbling because that's who your parents were to you, most times what you don't know is that you're sowing seeds in your children for the kind of adults they too would become. So it is not sufficient to just say, stop. Okay, it's not sufficient to just say stop today. It is for you to know that these behaviors were acquired over a long period of time, and you need to be kind and gentle on yourself. The parent that you have become, you became that parent over a long period of time. You will not change your parenting style in an instant. You will not change who you are one day. So you need to be nice to yourself. You need to affirm yourself when you do well as a parent in the process of correcting the things that you didn't know. You need to be soft on yourself. You need to give yourself time. You need to reward yourself as a parent when you do well. You need to reward yourself as a parent when you do well. And this is why, like I mentioned at the very beginning, feedback moments with your kids or with your spouse is very important, so that sometimes you don't only ask them, what is daddy not doing well? What is mommy not doing well? You ask them, what is daddy doing well? What is mommy doing well? And when you do that, you probably want to talk with your kids about the kind of reward you should get for that. Okay. It could be, oh, you need a massage. It could be, oh, you need a pedicure. It could be, oh, you need to reward yourself with a book, a new book this week, this month, whatever. You want to decide the kind of rewards, because many of us have been too harsh on ourselves because we've come from a background where people, parents, other adults were so harsh on us. Not only are we harsh to the kids, we're harsh on ourselves. There is no affirmation, there is no constant reinforcement of positive behavior vis-a-vis positive rewards that can come to the parent. We're so negatively implying constantly, and so we create a whirlwind of dysfunction. Today you can begin the journey of ending that? First, by realizing that this is a problem, and then secondly, by realizing that you are responsible for creating the place where you are now. If you are responsible for creating where you are now, it empowers you to also be responsible for changing it. But if you blame other people, blame other circumstances, blame other situations, blame others, it means that you will not be able to change it at your own end. You will have to depend on other people, other circumstances, other situations to cause the change to happen. I often in my trainings talk to people about being at cause and helping other people to be at cause, being responsible and helping other people to be responsible, being the one who makes things happen and helping other people to be responsible for making things happen. It doesn't mean you force other people to make things happen, force other people to make change happen, force other people, compel other people to be responsible. No. Once you realize and you begin to make adjustments, then we create a uh, um, um, a ripple effect around us, a ripple effect that can affect other people positively. And this is so powerful. This is so powerful, and it can help you to be able to deal with this. Now, um, I want to say something quickly. Let me look at my notes briefly. I haven't looked at it all evening long. So, okay. Yes. Just give me a second, please. Hello? Yeah. Okay. So what is very important that we do is we begin to look at our lives. We need to begin to look at our lives individually. I mean, in perspective, and look at what are my values? Where did I get these values from? Which of my values are conflicting and not adding value to who I am today? And which of these values am I passing on to my children without my awareness? And put a halt to that and begin to see how you do not project your values onto your children. You don't project your attitudes onto your children. You don't project your past onto your children, your memories onto your children. You begin to watch your language, your self-talk, and the internal conversations and the internal chatter that you're engaging in, and and ensuring that you are looking at that very carefully, and you are also watching your language outwardly, what you're saying to others, and how your language is structured, because your language structuring is often revealing your beliefs, your values, and whether there are contradictions and conflicts there that are not enabling you to create the kinds of outcomes that you want. I hope I made it very, very clear. Once you watch your values, watch your beliefs, watch your attitudes, you can begin to see, even from your language, where conflict exists, so that you can begin to deal with those conflicts and remove those conflicts and not pass on that dysfunction onto your children, onto other younger people that you meet. And usually, it's not just what you pass on to others, it's the harmony that you create within yourself, the peace that you create within yourself. And that leads you to become happier, much more peaceful, more productive, and it helps you to become somebody who is more positive, more approachable. You have this healthy sense of self-esteem, and then you are dealing with other people with a lot of emotional intelligence and helping other people to connect with their essence and to be in the place where God wants them to be, so that we can create a healthier family unit, a healthier community, a healthier society, a healthier nation, and of course, a healthier world that would only come if we improve on our lives, improve on our experiences, and create what we want to create, having dealt with the things that we want to deal with. All right. What else is important that I want to share this evening? What else is important that I want to share this evening? Let me look at it very well. Many people have been affected by childhood trauma. I have somebody very important that's been trying to reach me. I think they are very desperate. I don't know what it is. So if you permit me, I'd like to just give them quick direction and then get back to you. Okay. Hello. Yeah. Yes. 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 Okay, no problem. Just leave them. Just leave them. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. All right. Yeah. So what else is important? What else is important? Okay. All right. Um Sorry for the distraction. Yeah, so if you have found, let me talk solutions. Let me talk solutions instead of analyzing where we are and blah 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 blah. Okay, solutions. If you have been impacted upon by trauma, one of the things you want to do is, many times people want to get help all by themselves, but I challenge you. I challenge you to seek help from professionals. I challenge you to seek help from counselors, seek help from professional therapists, seek help by seeking knowledge in this area, seeking knowledge about your trauma, seeking knowledge about parenting, seeking better, effective tools and strategies for parenting your children more effectively. Times where more abuse has been created and pain has been created, and a lot of heartache has been created, we need to seek for forgiveness. We need to seek for forgiveness from our children. We need to seek for forgiveness from parents that we have held in contempt, people we have felt pained by. We need to seek for forgiveness many, many, many times. If you don't seek for forgiveness, nothing is going to happen. Okay. So I want to strongly encourage you to deal with this, to seek for forgiveness, and to get healing so that you can move forward. Get healing so that you can move forward. Get healing so that you can move forward. Um, Having conversations that will begin to empower you in this area can be very, very important. Having those conversations with your children, having those conversations with your spouse, going back, if you are blessed to have parents who are still alive. I just lost my dad. There were, realizations about conversations that we have not totally had that I wish we had. And some of those conversations on the weekend of his burial, afterwards, what I started to do was to begin to talk with my mom, ask her a lot of questions, ask her a lot of things I was concerned about, I have had concerns with. And you need to engage in those conversations. Sometimes they are tough conversations, sometimes they are tough talks. You need to engage in them so that you begin to deal with stuff and heal from stuff and get to move on. And get to move on. If you don't get to move on, you would have a lot of issues. Okay. Um, Many people are not aware that they've been traumatized because they do not know any better. But when people begin to hear these conversations, they begin to see the importance of experiencing change in different areas of their lives. And then they begin to have conversations that would help them revisit the childhood that the adult in them has never sought to revisit. If there are things and areas in your life, times and areas of your past that you are always avoiding in conversations, you always do not like to be reminded. Many times, it's a sign of things that have traumatized you, impacted upon you negatively, and you have not dealt with. So, dealing with them will help you move forward. It will help you to heal the inner child in you. It will help you to become much more of a better adult, a better parent, somebody who doesn't have a lot of weight on their shoulders, and therefore you are able to move forward easily and effortlessly. But not dealing with those in your life creates situations where you begin to become very defensive, you become more emotional, you become less productive, you become very avoidance focused in conversations, in connecting with other children, in connecting with your spouse, you become angry. And so, if you want to avoid all of that and you're looking at productivity in your career, you're looking at productivity in your relationship with other people, you're looking at peace in your heart, even good health on your inside, because many people sometimes go to hospitals and tests are conducted and the doctors say we can't find anything that is wrong, we do not know what is causing this, and many people are not aware that this is as a result of many unresolved issues from their past. So the earlier you begin to sit down and draft issues today that were not resolved in your yesterday, the better parent that you become. And in fact, this is one of the best gifts as a parent that you can give to your children that are coming, or the children that you have right now. So you don't listen to this conversation or this entire week conversations that Vivian and her team are creating and said, oh, I wish I had known this longer. No, no, no. You can start today. You can start right now. You can start the moment that you get. There's this African proverb that says that the moment you wake up, when you wake up is when your morning begins. So your day begins today. Your awakeness, your life becomes at the point of connecting with the aha moment, with the discovery, with the finding that you make of you get a level of awareness. The moment you have that level of awareness, that level of aha, I got it finally, that moment you begin to have responsibility. Remember, to whom much is given, much is expected. So in the days of ignorance, there's a lot of excusing you, there's a lot of winking at you, there's a lot of not holding you to account. But the moment you begin to know, you can begin to have certain things to you can begin to know that, say, it's time I deal with this, it's time I move forward with this, it's time I begin to resolve this. The issue with too many unresolved issues from our past, too many unresolved issues from our past has created a whirlwind of inner turmoil, a whirlwind of dysfunction, a whirlwind of adults behaving like babies from time to time. Have you ever been to a filling station and you see somebody fighting at the filling station? Somebody caught somebody in traffic and it creates a fight. Somebody just pushes somebody's car in traffic, and then people react disproportionately, and many times it's because of a yearning, a cry on the inside of an adult, or an inner child that was never healed. Okay, you see people fighting on the streets, and somebody says, "Wow, I thought this person was a professor, or I thought this person is a pastor, is an imam. I thought this person is supposed to be 60. Why are they behaving like this?" Many times, there's an adult in them that has a child in them that is not healed. So, dealing with issues from our past will require that we seek help. We require that we begin to say, oh, how can I deal with this? How can I deal with this? How can I deal with this? And I'm glad that you're on this forum and having these conversations with Vivian, with her team, and with the wonderful presenters that are here this week having these conversations and talking about these issues. If you have any questions in terms of the things that I've shared with you today, you have any questions, you have any concerns, you have anything you want to ask, or any clarification you want to get, I'll be so glad to take them. I have Floxy C. Floxy C here says, if you always have to explain to your children why you want them to do something, is that okay? Why would you not want to explain to your children why you want them to do something? Now, it's sometimes, if it's because you have not built trust. The moment you build trust with your children up to a certain level, if you ask them to do something and they know that you mean well for them all the time, they go do it. If they are not doing it, then you need to have a conversation. Our parents say, "Look, I'm your dad, I'm your mom, so you gotta do it." Hey, children today ask questions. Generation Z, cadre of kids want to ask questions. They want to know, why do I have to do this? And so you have to explain to them sometimes. Okay. At times when you cannot explain because you have to hurry up or you have to do something else, it's always important to get back to a place where you have built rapport with them and you can have a healthy conversation that is devoid of the yelling, the shouting, the ordering, the forcing the stick on people, and those kinds of things. See, every time you are reacting to your child not doing something or not being in it, and why do children have to be doing something? Children are there for relating, not for doing something. They're there for relating, not for doing something. They can do something if you have taught them to do it and they are in a position to do it. So once that is not going on, usually the response you get from a relationship is indicative of how well you did in directing the doing of that thing. Okay. Usually the feedback you get is telling on the kind of person that you know. So if you're not getting the feedback that you want, then you need to change how you pass the instruction or what you did to arrive at that point in time. Afekweme Awani asks, what if your parent is unwilling to discuss it? Every time you are experiencing somebody unwilling to discuss something, it means that there is a snag in your relationship. You need to build rapport. You need to go to areas where you agree with that person commonly, areas where there is less friction, and then build your conversation from the areas of less friction, less wahala, and gradually come to this place. Many times we need to pace people before we can lead them. You need to meet people where they are before you can take them to where you want them to be. Many of us don't do that. We just come and we want to hijack people to what conversation we want to have or where we want them to be. So you need to learn how to pace people, be with people before you take them to where you want to be. You don't want to come and force a conversation today. Sometimes some people are not ready. Sometimes people are in pain. Sometimes remembering them of that episode creates a lot of snag and issues that they don't want to talk about. So you want to create rapport, and this is a powerful skill that you can also learn how to create. Nonye Osagri says, an adult that keeps malice at the slightest offense from her partner, what could be wrong during his upbringing, sir? Many things can be wrong. It is only when you dig to the depth of the deep that you find what happened. There is no one thing that will happen that will make that kind of person like that, but something has obviously happened to them. It may not be in their upbringing, it may be at work, it may be something, in their environment. It could be, there's always something, but we do not keep pointing as that thing as responsible. The adult is responsible for their behavior. You need to have a conversation with this person when you have the best of environment, the best of situation. You have a good time to have those conversations. Many of us want to force conversations when people are not in the mood. We want to force conversations when the people are not ready. We want to force conversations when tempers are hot. We want to always learn how to have conversation. If somebody wants to avoid a conversation, you can let it go and let it go. Keep letting it go until you build sufficient rapport and you pace them sufficiently to get what you want. Titi Awosanya says, how do I help my 4-year-old be more assertive? I see him play along with whatever his friend does instead of doing his own thing. When a child is not doing his own thing, is doing whatever, it could be sometimes that you have forced him to be a people pleaser by always getting your approval before doing something. And so you need to take responsibility and pay attention to what you are always the reprimand. Are you always reprimanding this child? I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying it could be. So there may be 1,001 things that are causing that. Okay, but sometimes you see these videos on social media where parents are having this conversation with their kids. You let the child look at the mirror before they go out and say, I am confident, I am this, and those are affirmations. But you don't do that and then compromise that later by yelling at the kids, hitting the kid, and doing all those things. You would need to have a very healthy conversation with this kid. But sometimes, if your child, if you raise up your hand to give your child a high five and they duck, it's indicative that there has been a relationship that is warranting the child ducking. So you need to revisit what has caused that over the years, over the many months, over the period of the child's upbringing. So, how do I help my 4-year-old teacher be more assertive? I say retrace your step, begin to have conversations with this child, accept him. Don't always punish the child for doing wrong. Um, Open up a line of communication that was not previously. Let your child know they can trust you. For example, my children break glasses and they announce it. They don't hide it because nobody has ever been punished or yelled at or reprimanded for breaking a glass. See. I just determined growing up that everything I experienced with my father or my mother that was not right, I was committed to not passing it on to my children. Now, I still passed on a couple, and in the last couple of years, since I got in touch with my area of specialization, neuro linguistics programming, I have been working on correcting these and reversing these and dealing with stuff as they show up in my life. Do I have more questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? If your child is doing only what his friend does, check out. Maybe you have been
No,
forcing him to please you.
that's our
Or
last
see.
question.
Oh, that's our last question. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure here connecting with as many as I could in the most
So
informal
much.
way. Yeah, so it's been my pleasure connecting with
Thank
you.
you so
If you
much,
want to
Mr.
connect with
Uta.
if you want to connect with what we do at Innocent Minds, just visit our website innocentminds.com.ng or visit our Facebook page Inside Innocent Minds. It's our Facebook group, rather. It's called Inside Innocent Minds. Inside Innocent Minds, or go to our website, innocentminds.com.ng. And you can connect with all that we do as people working with other people, parents, teachers, schools, adults, whatever. But Vivian, you're doing an amazing job. I'm particularly excited about this year's package that you have put together. Fantastic speakers, and the great job I see that you have been doing over the last couple of years. It is very and highly unusual. I commend you. I salute you that you do. Well done. Great job.
Thank you for this. I'm so excited much same business session. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Mr. Usa. So you can connect, search on Facebook. Yeah, search on Facebook for Innocent Mind about be handled in a sitting. They are works to be the right person to walk that journey with. Thank you, Mr. Usa. Thank you. The subscribe button and click the bell so that you get the notification whenever we go live, even if you forget. If you're on the Facebook group, session is happening right after this one, and we're talking about how to create a parenting plan. The first two conversations that we're going to have in the course of this conference. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for the next